They call it loneliness, but that word barely scratches the surface. Because this isn't about being alone or missing company. It's about standing in the middle of laughter, surrounded by people, and still feeling like a ghost in the room. It's a silence no one else hears. A kind of exile that doesn't come from others, but from a life lived outside of your truth. You felt it for as long as you can remember. You were the child who saw too much, felt too deeply, asked the kind of questions that made adults uncomfortable. You sensed things others missed, the tension behind a smile, the emptiness beneath the noise, and you carried that knowing like a weight no one else seemed to notice. People called you intense, too sensitive, too serious, too much or not enough, so you learned to shrink. You silenced the questions. You dimmed the light. You folded yourself into boxes that never quite fit, just to belong somewhere, anywhere. But what if the very things you were told to hide are sacred? What if the traits that made you feel like a stranger are actually signs that you're on a path few dare to walk? Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming yourself often means breaking away from everything you were taught to be. And that break is painful. It feels like isolation. Like you're the outsider in every room. The one who can't seem to play the game, say the right things, wear the right mask. You've spent your life adapting to a world that rewards performance over presence. You became fluent in the language of pretending, smiling when you're hurting, staying quiet when you're burning inside, acting like you're fine when you're falling apart. You learned to survive. But you never stopped longing to be seen. Maybe you were never meant to blend in. Maybe the ache in your chest isn't weakness. Maybe it's a call. Because what the world labels as strange is often brilliance it doesn't know how to understand. What they call sensitivity might just be a rare form of intelligence, the kind that speaks the language of energy, intuition, truth. You don't just see the surface, you feel the undercurrent. And that can be both a gift and a burden. There's a kind of pain that comes from never quite belonging. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It follows you into crowded rooms, into quiet nights, into the deepest parts of your soul. You laugh with others, but a part of you is always somewhere else, watching through a window no one else can see. You hear the unsaid, notice the disconnect, sense the truth behind the mask, and you wonder if it's you who's broken. But what if this isn't brokenness? What if it's awakening? From a young age, you saw through the scripts. The shallow conversations drained you. The small talk felt like noise. The games people played left you hollow. But instead of seeing this as wisdom, you thought it was your fault. That you were failing to adapt. That something in you was missing. But maybe nothing is missing. Maybe you're just built for more. When you're deeply intuitive, spiritually sensitive, when you carry empathy like a sixth sense, the world can feel like too much. You're not just reacting to what's happening. You're absorbing everything. The tension, the joy, the lies, the longing. And while everyone else seems fine, you're left spinning, full of truths no one else seems ready to hear. This isn't dysfunction. It's depth. It's the soul remembering. You begin to see how much of the world runs on illusions, on performance, control, repetition, schools, jobs, even families, that they reward sameness. They applaud the mask. But your spirit was made for something else, for truth, for freedom, for meaning. And the more you try to play along, the more something in you starts to fracture. You feel the cost of betrayal every time you smile when you want to cry, every time you nod when your heart says no. Inside, something whispers, "This isn't who you are." And maybe that's the beginning. Maybe that voice inside is your compass. Because Jung also said, your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, but who looks inside awakens. The awakening doesn't begin with clarity, it begins with an ache. A quiet, relentless ache that whispers something isn't quite right. Not with the world, not even with your surroundings, but with how you've had to shape yourself to fit into them. You begin to realize the discomfort isn't a flaw in you, it's a signal from within. A pull toward something more honest, more real. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to shrink yourself to fit in the mold. You were made to feel, to see, to sense. But the world often tells you that being real is too much, too inconvenient, too disruptive. So you adapt. You tuck away the sharp edges of your insight. You soften the weight of your emotions. You bury the visions you can't quite explain. And for a while, you pass. You learn how to move through life like everyone else seems to, on the surface. but something deep keeps stirring. That ache doesn't go away. It grows, louder, heavier. And it's not because you're broken, it's because you're remembering. You're remembering that you were never supposed to go numb. You were never meant to live disconnected from the truth that pulses under everything. You walk into a room and feel the tension before anyone speaks. You sense the sadness behind smiles, the exhaustion behind laughter. You leave crowded spaces feeling drained, not because you dislike people, but because you absorb what they don't say. You carry emotions no one wants to name. You try to explain it, this sensitivity, this awareness, but they dismiss you. Too dramatic, too sensitive, too much. So you grow quiet. You stop sharing, you hold it all inside. But silence doesn't mean emptiness. It means fullness, full of truth, of depth, of feeling. And that fullness doesn't fit in shallow places. So if you've always felt like you don't quite belong, maybe it's because you're not supposed to belong in a world that's forgotten how to feel. Maybe you're here to help it remember. And maybe you weren't meant to fit in, but to see through. And that gift comes at a price. It often looks like loneliness, like being on the outside looking in, like walking a path others don't even see. There's a pattern that plays out in the lives of those who carry this kind of awareness, a quiet kind of exile, a sense of being displaced, not physically but spiritually. You watch people fall into roles, routines, masks that never made sense to you. You try to play along, but your soul won't let you. It keeps pulling you inward. And that pull has been named before. Carl Jung saw it in those he worked with. He recognized a certain type of person, one who walks differently through life, moved by something deeper, shaped by something archetypal. He called it the outsider. But the outsider isn't just someone who feels alone. There's someone who sees what others don't, who hears what others won't. And because of that, they're often misunderstood, avoided, even rejected. But that place on the margins, it's not punishment, it's preparation. Because what you carry is not meant for the surface, it's meant to stir the deep. Your very presence disrupts what's been ignored. You walk into spaces and the truth you carry makes people uncomfortable. Not because you're wrong, but because you're real. And realness confronts everything that's been pretending to be whole. You question what others accept without thought. You resist the rules no one talks about but everyone follows. You move differently, not out of rebellion but out of integrity. This is what Jung called individuation, the journey back to the essence beneath the mask, a return to the self beneath the performance. And it's not a comfortable road. It means leaving behind false belonging. It means letting go of who you were taught to be in order to become who you truly are. That path often feels like walking alone, not because you don't need connection, but because you refuse to betray what you see. You start to recognize other archetypes living within you too. The wounded healer, the one who takes their own pain and shapes it into something sacred. The hermit, not someone who escapes the world, but someone who steps back to see it more clearly. The seer, the one who refuses to look away, who speaks the truth even when it trembles in their throat. These aren't just poetic ideas. They're living forces inside those who've always felt too deep, too aware, too honest for the surface-level life. People who've been told to tone it down, to get over it, to just go with the flow, but couldn't. Because what lives inside them is too strong to be silenced. And while the world may not understand it, may even reject it, that depth is not a flaw. It's a calling, a compass, a way back to what is real. You've probably heard it before, too much emotion, too much sensitivity, too intense. But what feels like too much is often just more than what others around you are used to. Maybe you tried to mute those parts of yourself, to blend in, to become someone easier for the world to accept. Yet no matter how hard you tried, a part of you refused to be silenced. That part is your soul, quietly refusing to fade away. Carl Jung once said that evil exists because people can't tell their stories. You've carried yours in silence for so long, a story too deep or complex for most to hear. But the role of the outsider isn't to disappear into silence. It's to reveal, not to everyone, but to those who are ready for the truth. You are not the problem. You are the mirror reflecting what others haven't processed yet. People often shy away from mirrors, not because they're wrong, but because they reveal uncomfortable truths. Your difference isn't about rejection. It's about recognition, the recognition of a role you came here to fulfill. You weren't born to blend in or to follow. You came to awaken, to remember. Your journey is one few will understand till they're ready to walk their own. You've spent years trying to quiet what sets you apart, to dim that inner fire, to be more like everyone else. But that feeling of not fitting in didn't go away because your soul wasn't meant to fit. It was meant to embody something deeper. Truth, feeling, presence. And embodying those things doesn't look like conformity. Jung taught that your true self doesn't need validation to be real. It just needs room to grow. When you stop fighting your nature and start honoring it, space opens inside you. You don't need to shout to be heard or be understood to be true. Your power begins with acceptance, from the inside out. Accept that your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's a form of spiritual awareness. Accept that your need to pull away isn't avoidance. It's protection of your energy. Accept that your search for meaning isn't fantasy. It's your soul waking up from a collective forgetfulness. And with that acceptance, you start to build your life around your own energy, not around other people's expectations. You make solitude sacred. You give yourself permission to say no without justification. Silence becomes your guide, and intuition, your compass. You stop chasing what doesn't fit and start creating what reflects your truth. Living with presence transforms everything. You no longer have to explain your difference. You just live it. And those who are meant to see it will recognize it in your calm, your clarity, your refusal to pretend, and the way you hold space without force. Your energy speaks louder than words. Your authenticity draws others in naturally. Your very existence becomes a quiet revolution, not loud or aggressive, but a presence that shifts the world simply by being. Jung said the scariest thing is to fully accept yourself, but that's where freedom begins. If you feel like the odd one out, it might be because you're the first in your family to question old patterns, the first to seek meaning beyond distraction, the first to walk a spiritual path the world doesn't yet see. This isn't a burden, it's a calling. You weren't born to play a role. You were born to remember a frequency and live it boldly, even if it unsettles others. Your difference vibrates with a power that disrupts illusion, calls forth truth, and invites others to start their own journey back home. You don't need a stage or a title. You only need to be exactly who you are. That is your purpose. All your life, you may have felt like the different one. Now you see that difference isn't a flaw. It's your frequency, your gift, your soul's signature. Jung said the greatest privilege is becoming who you truly are. You are becoming. You're not lost, just aligned. Not strange, but sovereign. Not rejected, but redirected. You were never meant to belong to the crowd. You were meant to awaken yourself, and through that awakening to awaken others. If this resonates, know this. You were never made to fit in. You were made to remember.